Good morning, good morning, good morning. How are you doing, Senator from the 12th? You the only one paying attention right now. Good morning, good morning. The time for convening has arrived. The Senate will come to order. At this time, I will ask all unauthorized personnel to exit the chamber. I recognize my good friend from beautiful Noonan, Georgia, the senator from the 28th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was just curious if you thought we should read the journal today.
Sir, I didn't. What was that?
Did you want to read the journal today? I mean, we got time. We don't.
You
really
know,
have
I'm impressed every time
on.
I ever hear you read.
My mama gets impressed too, so. Well, all right. Well, I don't feel like reading today, so let's dispense with the reading of I move that we dispense with the reading of the journal.
Senator has moved. Is there objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? The chair hears none. The reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to confirmation of the journal? Chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. No reading. No first reading. It's now time for the morning roll call. Are there any motions to excuse? Any motions to excuse? Everybody's here. All right. Secretary will call the roll, unlock the machines. All right. It is now time for our devotion. All senators, please take your seats and cease all audible conversation. I would ask the doorkeeper to secure the chamber at this time. I'd like to recognize my much slimmer senator from Habersham County, the distinguished senator from the 51st. The 50th.
Thank you, Mr. President. If y'all would rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the Georgia flag. I pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag and the principles for which it stands, wisdom, justice, moderation, and courage. All right. Thank you, Mr. President. It's an honor today to introduce the pastor of the day, Dr. Mike Franklin. This is especially an honor for me because I've known him and his family for quite some time. When I was in middle school, we had two big football players move in from Alabama that we were all excited about, and they were his sons, Daniel and David. And with them came Pastor Franklin, obviously, and he started Baldwin Church of God, which was a small church at the time. And since then, he grew it into what's known as the Torch. And he has touched thousands of lives in Habersham County, in northeast Georgia. He's had such a big impact spiritually on my home county and the people that I represent. He's just a true man of God. I'm excited that y'all get to hear him speak today. And it's my great honor to introduce the pastor of the day, Dr. Mike Franklin.
Thank you, Bo. It's pleasing when an old man sees these youngsters grow up and become something special. It's pretty cool. And it's fun to have watched him grow up. And I won't tell you about all the times I had to bail him and my sons out of mess, okay? We'll leave that behind. It's my honor to be with you today. I want to extend appreciation to Senator Gooch. I actually have two senators that represent me very, very well, Bo Hatchett and Steve Gooch, and he also is a friend. Both of these guys are honorable men. They are well known in their counties, and they are fabulous senators, and I'm thankful. I'm going to get right to the issue today. Yesterday, God just dropped a word in my heart to share with you, and I don't know for whom or to whom he's speaking, but somebody here is going to hear from the Lord today. I was approached by an individual Wednesday. He was livid. His hat was coming off, so to speak. A friend of his had exploded in an angry outburst, had betrayed him with petty theft. He had created a difficult confrontation, so much so that he berated him with vocabulary that would make a sailor blush. And when this young man came to me, it was clear he had walked away from that conversation wounded to the core. He was asking, what do I do? His simple question, what do I do, seems relatively easy to answer, but it is extremely complex. What he didn't realize in the moment was that he was asking the age-old question we all ask. It's dealing with the problem of evil that's resident in every day we live. It's resident in almost every situation with which we deal. So what is evil? Well, you and I know some of the ways that it affects us, that it appears in our lives because we deal with it every day. So what do we do with it? How do you handle it when that evil just pops up out of the blue? What do you do? Now, perhaps this august group may deal with less evil than the rest of us do, but I suspect you deal with your fair share too. I suspect that you know its presence all too well and that you deal with the same kind of outrageous happenings that this young man dealt with. So how do I overcome evil? How do I deal with it? How do I overcome the propensity in me to make huge mistakes, to do people wrong, to mistreat others? How do I overcome it? Well, the good news is that the message of the Word of God never changes. Evil is always something we can overcome, and we're going to all overcome it this same exact way. Romans chapter 12, verse 21 is explicit. Do not be overcome by evil. Always the
from the 14th got up and seemed somewhat offended by some. He said from the well is that the senator from the 29th, i.e. me, have even acknowledged in the past that there are and I'll quote, a lot of bad apples in law enforcement. That is not true. There are not a lot of bad apples in law enforcement. Anytime a law enforcement officer goes out and takes an action, which is millions of times a day in this country, sometimes the outcomes fly under the radar. Nobody knows what happens. And every once in a while, there's an anomaly. And Harvard, which is on the same level as the university my colleague from the 14th attended, had a study that came out and showed the data that how few times these things occurred, even saying that certain populations had a greater chance of being struck by lightning than for an unarmed, and I will say unarmed person from being shot by a law enforcement officer. And I want to make one thing perfectly clear when we talk about unarmed, especially for my colleagues in the room and especially for those in the back who enjoy writing articles about unarmed individuals. And I'll say this because I'm a curmudgeon. If anybody wants to meet me on the street one day and threaten me, and I'm not carrying an edge weapon, I'm not carrying a firearm, or I'm not carrying anything, let me be perfectly clear. I am not unarmed. I have watched female police officers be beaten by people. I've watched male officers, deputy sheriffs, being beaten, stomped, and kicked by individuals who, though they did not carry an edge weapon or know they did not carry a firearm, they were by no means unarmed. So let's be clear on that. Let's be clear on something else. What happened on 9/11 was not domestic terrorism. It was international terrorism. As all of my friends know in law enforcement, and as my friends who have graduated from law school understand, words matter. What Timothy McVeigh did in Oklahoma was domestic terrorism. What Eric Rudolph did in Atlanta, Georgia was domestic terrorism. What a individual who wrote a diary promoting the killing of pigs did when he shot a Georgia state trooper in the proverbial woods did was domestic terrorism. It's not flying planes into buildings by countries that are not our allies. It is people on American soil who claim to be Americans or claim to be supportive of Americans or here with any kind of certification, registration, or any kind of card, whether it be green, blue, or brown, when they take action against the American government to intimidate, to threaten, to maim, to murder in order to push their agenda forward, that is domestic terrorism. We have experienced domestic terrorism here in Atlanta. And finally, this is the Atlanta Public Safety Training Center. When you call 911 at 3 in the morning because your grandmother is experiencing what the senator got in the well and spoke about, the senator from the 25th, you're talking to a 911 dispatcher. That is public safety. When the ambulance pulls up in front of your house and the EMTs get off and they come in there to save your grandmother's life, that is public safety. When your house is on fire and a big red truck pulls out in front and a bunch of men and women get off and race into that to put that fire out, that is public safety. What our friends like to do is they like to play both sides against the middle. They say, I love law enforcement, and high-fiving men and women wearing badges saying, I support you, and every opportunity they have to spit in their face, they do it. Two things bother me more than anything. It's people that walk up to me and say, Senator, I appreciate your service as a law enforcement officer. I know some are sincere and some feel they just have to do it. Let me tell you now, you don't have to do it. God blessed me with an opportunity at the age of 22 to become something I never imagined I could be. And I found a family. And I told every one of you early on in my career, on my tombstone at the top, it'll say peace officer. It will not say state senator. It will not say son. I will not say husband or father, because my family knows what I was put on this earth to be, and that is a peace officer. And what we want to do is we want to drag every man and woman that goes out and makes those tough decisions every day up on top of Golgotha, and we want to crucify them to a cross. And then when we come up and say we have a solution, we have a solution for the citizens of the city of Atlanta, that they can construct a training center to avoid those problems, to avoid the 911 dispatchers making mistakes, to train the EMTs to the highest quality they need to be, to train those firefighters, and even more importantly in some cases, to train those law enforcement officers for the regular duties each and every day and for those emergency calls where they go out to deal with the mentally ill, which we all understand the importance of that. We put that opportunity up there, and all of a sudden, there's a problem because we have found a solution to the problem that they've been standing on and screaming from the top of all these years. What you have to understand, in their world, no matter what we do, will never be right. But guess what? What we're doing is right. If we put this amendment on this resolution, then we might as well put it on every piece of legislation that comes out of here. And why stop at the first? Let's list them all. Because isn't it understood that anything we pass out of here has to be constitutional? What are we here for in this special session? Because a judge says, well, maybe, got some problems here. So do we just need a big rubber stamp and every piece of legislation that comes out, we send it to the Secretary of the Senate's office, and he and his team will just stamp the Constitution on the back of it and say, there you go, we just want to make sure everybody understands. This is, to put it in the best word, ridiculous. I encourage you to vote against the amendment. I encourage you to vote for the Atlanta Public Safety Training Center resolution. And I ask that you vote against those who promote violence against any of our public safety brothers and sisters and any of the citizens of Georgia. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. Senator from the 6th.
Good morning, colleagues. I rise this morning in support of public safety officials, in support of ensuring that they are well trained, and ensuring that our communities are safe. I also speak in support of the right to peacefully protest. What I do oppose, however, are performative measures that do very little to actually improve things for people here in Georgia, but are actually intended to be used for political ads, for mailers. And that's what we are here voting on this morning. Politics. We saw this on Wednesday when a resolution to support the people of Israel was introduced for the sole intention of trying to show division in the Democratic caucus. How do I know that? Because when my colleague, the sponsor, called from this well for the unanimous support of that resolution, and a motion was made for unanimous consent, the majority opposed that motion. Why? Because it was performative. Because if the majority really wanted to support the people of Israel, and Jewish Georgians in particular, they would have passed the anti-Semitism bill earlier this year. But they didn't do that. Why? Not because of minority members, not because of Democrats, but because members of their own caucus. Similarly, this resolution this morning is intended for nothing else but to be used for campaign ads and for mailers. Because if this body really wanted to support public safety officials, if this body really wanted to support police officers, we would be addressing mental health. We would be limiting access to guns, both of which this body failed to act on earlier this year. If we wanted to help police, we'd be supportive of better health care for those police officers, affordable housing initiatives, community development measures that actually keep our communities safe. Again, initiatives that this body has been slow to act on. We are supposed to be here this week to ensure that every Georgian has equal power to the ballot box. So let's focus on doing the work on the people of Georgia, for the people of Georgia, and stop these performative measures that do nothing more than allow you to try to send a mailer or a phone call to win political campaigns. I yield the well.
Senator from 56.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to be brief because we've got a lot of work to do today. It's been my great honor to serve as your Senate Public Safety Chairman these many years. I get to work with our dedicated city, county, school, state, and federal professionals each and every day who prioritize saving lives, upholding peace, preserving our most cherished freedoms and liberty, and respond to your most vulnerable times. These courageous individuals understand the demands and challenges, and they're up to the task each and every day. They devote themselves to the truism that a civilized society, the ability to protect and respond to citizens during their most critical time of need, is supreme. I hope each one of you will take a moment today to thank each and every one of them who stand on the front lines of our communities to protect and to serve us. Best of my knowledge, only a few of us have actually been to the Atlanta Public Trade Center to see the construction, the violent attacks, the destroyed property, the men and women who were spit upon, had fireworks shot off in their face, had heavy rocks and cinder blocks thrown at them, and that's just to name a few. People who do not condemn this violence and stand with this ought to be ashamed. Illustrating the point of what other cities did and why we're standing here today and why we're supporting this is when some of the most progressive cities in this nation now realize their catastrophic impacts of their very poor and short-sighted decision-making are changing course of where they did not want to train or fully fund their police, fire, EMS, and 911. But unfortunately, it's far too late for the many victims. Too little, too late. We have an opportunity now, though, to stand. I heard some of my colleagues' impassioned plea about the right to the First Amendment, and we all agree. You have the right to protest. You have the right to be heard. But if you put others in danger and you commit a crime, you have the right to remain silent and be placed under arrest. We're blessed to live here in the United States of America. We are a republic, and we elect people to serve in different levels of government. And if you don't like that direction, we can vote and we can make changes every 2 or 4 years based on our process. Fortunately, we have a lot of folks that want to usurp that now, and I would challenge each and every one of them, try and pass the police academy or the fire academy or become an EMT or a paramedic. I would bet you almost all would fail. Because it takes courage, selflessness, hard work, and ethics. These violent protests against the Atlanta Public Safety Training Center that serves as a police academy, a fire academy, training EMT and paramedics, and our 911 operators is critical to our capital city. My very good friend, decorated veteran from, you may know from the movie Black Hawk Down, Colonel Michael Steele says it best: patriotism without action is counterfeit. It's hard to lead and govern. Today we're going to reaffirm our support. I heard the word seriousness. There's a lot of significantly non-serious people then who are out saying and doing things that are totally and wholly inappropriate. I agree with the senator from the 29th. We're not going to put the Bill of Rights in every single resolution we have here today. This is simple. It was made out to be something it was not to be. So let's be clear as I round out. We proudly stand with the Atlanta Public Safety Training Center. And as someone who has served for over 3 decades as a firefighter and EMT, and 5 total generations of my family that have served in all aspects from fire, police, EMS, and 911, I know firsthand the importance of training my brothers and my sisters in public safety. Training our bravest and finest is critically important to the safety of our men and women in uniform, as well as those who are sworn to protect it. This is not political. Stop making it political. Vote for the resolution as it is, and let's move on. Thank you. I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. Okay, look, we're going to let two more people speak. I'm going to let the senator from the 41st to speak to her amendment speak, and then I'm going to let the senator from the 18th. We probably debate this all day, but it's time to go red or green on this thing because we got plenty of debate left here. And I appreciate the passion and enthusiasm, but it's time to move on. Senator from the 41st.
Thank you, Mr. President, for allowing me to close debate on the amendment. I want to refocus us. A lot of passion, a lot of words have been expressed about the whole of this resolution. But I offered this very simple amendment to reaffirm our American concept that we have a right to free speech. And I asked for us to put that in this resolution, not to be ridiculous, but instead to acknowledge that we come from a history of people feeling intimidated and afraid to protest when they see people get arrested. And so I am very clear that I am only standing here today because of protest, because black people and white people stood shoulder to shoulder and expressed their First Amendment right and protested. And I want us to use this resolution to affirm that, to say that we can do two things. We can both support firefighters and EMTs, and we can say we know we are better together when we allow people to safely protest. That is all my resolution is, my amendment is about. It is simply affirming that we are better when people know that we as a Senate support their fundamental rights to peacefully protest. With that, I'll yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. Senator from the 18th.
Jeez. Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. Wow. We really hit a nerve with a resolution from the governor's office, haven't we? A resolution that simply honors the city of Atlanta's dedication to public safety. A resolution that simply honors the city of Atlanta's dedication to public safety. What does the resolution say? Whereas the state of Georgia stands in support of the city of Atlanta, its continued dedication to strengthening public safety through the creation of the Atlanta Public Safety Training Center, and all those defending against the criminal acts committed by extremists opposed to this worthy endeavor. Are we really going to politicize that? Is that something you really struggle with supporting? We don't need the amendment. There's no ambiguity in it. The senator from the 14th was asked to identify the need, and not one line, not one word, not one phrase was identified as an ambiguity such that we need to restate the First Amendment language that's proposed by this amendment. That's your best evidence on why we don't need the amendment. Vote no on the amendment. I want to thank Governor Kemp for bringing this resolution forward, and I want to thank the sponsor, from the senator from the 3rd. This is entirely appropriate. If we can't support the city of Atlanta and the mayor of Atlanta, the Democratic mayor of Atlanta, who wants this, needs this, and in his wisdom and judgment needs this for the city of Atlanta, and we can't simply say that we're honoring that, wow. Vote no on the amendment. Vote yes, and it, as very eloquently stated by the senator from the 3rd, you're either with public safety or you're not. It's a simple choice. Vote yes on the resolution. Mr. President, I yield the will.
Thank you, Senator. Okay, the previous question is ordered on the resolution. Debate is closed. Now we move to Amendment 1 for the resolution. All those in favor of Amendment 1, Oh, is there objection to adopting Amendment 1? All right. All right. All those in favor of Amendment 1 will vote yea. All opposed, nay. Unlock the machines. Secretary, unlock the machines. Senator from the 14th, for what purpose do you rise?
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. President.
State your inquiry.
Mr. President, isn't it true that when it comes to politicizing things, he who smelt it dealt it?
That's just a terminology I think you're only familiar with there, Senator. I don't know. On the adoption of the resolution, the yeas are 23, the nays are 31, and the resolution, or the amendment has failed, excuse me. Moving on to the resolution authored by the senator from the 3rd. Questions on the adoption of the resolution. All those in favor of the resolution will vote yea. Opposed, nay. Secretary will unlock the machine. Senator from the 2nd, for what purpose do you rise?
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr.
State your
President.
inquiry.
Mr. President, is it not true that it would be better than giving a resolution than to pay our state law enforcement more inside of our state because we're the lowest paid in the region?
We are always in favor of increasing compensation for our men and women law enforcement. That's why we gave them our state troopers the largest raise in the history of the state last year. But we can do more. Yes, you're correct. On the adoption of the resolution, the yeas are 48, the nays are 5, and the resolution has received the requisite constitutional majority and is therefore adopted. Senator from 33rd. What purpose do you
I'll
rise?
wait till unanimous consent. I need to excuse somebody.
It's appropriate time.
Oh, ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 5th for business outside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senator from the 5th is excused. Are there any motions to withdraw and recommit? Chair recognizes Majority Leader for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that Senate Bill 1EX be engrossed at this time.
Majority Leader has moved that SB 1EX be engrossed. Is there objection? There is objection. Does the Majority Leader wish to speak? All those in favor of engrossment will vote yea. All those opposed, nay. Secretary will lock the machine. On the motion to engross, the yeas are 32, the nays are 22, and the motion has prevailed. Senate Bill 1EX is engrossed. Third reading, and Secretary will read third reading and consideration of the general bills and resolutions.
Senate Bill 1EX by Senator Eccles of the 49th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to provide for the composition and number of state senatorial districts, to provide for a short title, to provide for the contingent nature of this act, and circumstances under which it shall or shall not apply, according to the enforceability of prior provisions under federal law, to provide for the continuation of present senators, to provide for effective date, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Reapportionment and Redistricting recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Eccles of the 49th, Chairman. That completes the order, Mr. President.
Now moving on to the rules calendar, I recognize the senator from the 49th.
Mr. President, thank you. Colleagues, I'm here today to present our new map as prescribed by Judge Jones. I'll talk about the map drawing process and then I'll also walk through district by district so that everyone has an understanding of the changes. We began the process by carefully reviewing Judge Jones's order. The order was very specific about what needs to be done in the Senate. He said, and I quote, "The remedy involves 2 additional majority black Senate districts in South Metro Atlanta." That's on page 509 of his order. Judge Jones also noted that the districts drawn by the various plaintiff experts overlapped in areas. Shortly after Governor Kemp called for a special legislative session, I sent out emails to every senator from the affected areas to meet. Because of the short amount of time that we had to prepare, I allocated several days to be at the Capitol and even more days to meet virtually. I met with one member at 7:30 in the morning at the Capitol. I talked to one member while I was at a UGA football game. I would like to thank those senators for taking time to meet with me. Your discussions were very helpful, especially when I found out that one member had moved and we didn't have her correct address. We consulted with legal counsel and began drawing districts with Gina Wright in her office. The first thing we did was we drew the new majority black districts that were required by the order in South Metro Atlanta. Those new districts are 28 and 17 on the plan in front of you. So in the packet that you have, you've got the first page of it has the whole map of Georgia with all of the reflected changes. But if you'll flip to the next page, there's a map where only the affected districts are highlighted, and that's the map you see up here today. With this configuration, almost all of the black voters covered by the areas in the plaintiff's experts districts in those areas are included in majority black state Senate districts. The only area not included is Griffin, but that area was not included in a majority black district for one of the plaintiff's experts plans either. Placing districts in the south part of Metro Atlanta meant that other districts had to move north. You can think of that as a ripple effect of moving districts. As a result, majority white Senate District 42 moved from the northern part of DeKalb to eastern Metro Atlanta, and majority white Senate District 6 moved from the northern part of Fulton County to western Metro Atlanta.
Our proposed Senate plan, all in all, the proposed Senate plan involves changes to 15 districts, all within Metro Atlanta. Our primary goal in creating this district plan is to comply with Judge Jones's order in every respect. I told each member that I met with that my primary goal is simply to comply with the judge's order. After drawing the districts required by the court order, we then followed our existing traditional redistricting principles to work on the remaining districts. Those traditional redistricting principles include maintaining district populations so that deviations from the ideal district size are less than 1% to comply with the U.S. Constitution requirement of one person, one vote. We also plan to limit additional split counties by only adding one additional county split. Drawing new districts utilizing the most recent precincts from county governments. Some counties updated their voter precincts this summer, and these maps recognize those county voting precinct changes. Ensuring all districts are contiguous. Ensuring all districts are reasonably compact in shape. Ensuring communities of interest are protected as far as possible. Many of you described your communities of interest in our meetings, and your input was invaluable with that. Avoiding the unnecessary pairing of incumbents by ensuring that every incumbent senator of both parties is not paired, and we've done that. As part of our efforts to ensure every incumbent senator had a district to run in and win in, we also worked to maintain the continuity of representation as much as possible, which involved partisan political considerations to ensure that the Senate plan remained balanced between the political parties as it was in 2021. This means that we also used extensive partisan data, including election returns from 2018, 2020, and 2022. Now I'm going to discuss the new majority black Senate districts. The first one that I'll discuss is Senate District 17. District 17 is one of the new majority black districts required by the court order. It is located in almost exactly the same location as the plaintiff's experts districts in this area. The district contains the panhandle of and southern part of Clayton County, combined with most of Stockbridge and McDonough. The district includes all of Hampton as well. Judge Jones relied on the inclusion of most of McDonough, Locust Grove, and Hampton in the same district for this area in his order at pages 285, 286, and 316. The district boundary of District 17 matched those communities centered on McDonough. This district boundary has only one single incumbent. Next is Senate District 28. District 28 is the other new majority black district required by the court order. The plaintiff's experts drew this district in two different places. One expert anchored the district in South Fulton, as we have done here. The other expert utilized population from Districts 16 and 34, which resulted in higher black voting age population percentages in adjoining districts. District 28, as proposed, is anchored in South Fulton County, where one of the plaintiff's districts was, and ensures that black voters in Fulton, Fayette, and Clayton counties are all in majority black districts. District 28 also relies on some of the same highways and healthcare system Judge Jones relied on pages 325 and 326 in his order. The district includes part of the city of South Fulton and moves north into Austell, areas that Judge Jones found to share strong connections on pages 190 and 191 of his order. The district connects a number of suburbs around Metro Atlanta that are all experiencing growth and are diverse communities. This configuration also limited the number of adjoining districts that had to be touched, and this district has one single incumbent. Because we began the map drawing process by first creating the new majority black districts that Judge Jones called for, adjustments had to be made to surrounding districts to account for that population shift. A few things to know about these remaining districts. First, both plaintiffs' experts testified that they didn't know a lot of details about Georgia geography. Our process was informed by Ms. Gina Wright, the state cartographer, and her extensive knowledge of Georgia and my meetings with senators about their districts. We believe we've reached a plan that is far better than those proposed by the plaintiffs while complying with everything the judge requires because we know Georgia better. Second, it's important to note that the ripple effect is real when drawing plans. When new districts are located in the southern part of Metro Atlanta, nearby population has to be adjusted. Those changes then ripple out, primarily north, until they are resolved. Third, the 15 changed districts here are less than those proposed by the plaintiffs' experts. So we were able to maintain district cores in a better way than their experts were. Mr. Esselstyn changed 22 of the enacted Senate districts, and Mr. Cooper changed 35 of the enacted Senate districts on their proposed plans. Ours changes 15. Fourth, we also took into account the work on county elections officials. Those officials have to update the voter registration database. By drawing the map this way, we are working to minimize the amount of work required of those officials before the 2024 elections. Fifth, the plan does not eliminate any existing minority opportunity districts. Let me restate that. This plan does not eliminate any existing minority opportunity districts. Judge Jones was clear on page 510 of the order that we cannot eliminate any existing minority opportunity districts. While he doesn't define that term, it's clear he is referring to existing majority black districts. On page 511, he refers to whether the plan provides black voters with additional opportunity districts. There are also references to opportunity districts that clearly refer to black voters on pages 106, 145 through 146, 268, 417 through 20, and 427. This plan does not eliminate any existing majority black districts. And it takes two existing majority white districts, District 17 and District 28, and converts them into majority black districts. Sixth, it's important to remember that we believe our 2021 Senate plan complies with the Voting Rights Act and are pursuing an appeal of the judge's order. That's why you will see language in this order that reverts to the 2021 plan if the appeal is successful. This mirrors language used by a Democratic majority in 2002 when the state Senate plan was not pre-cleared in time for use in that election. But if anyone is upset with how a district is configured, remember, we did not draw these districts this way in 2021 originally, and we did not want to redraw these districts now. We're doing this because we were sued by democratically affiliated groups. Now I'm going to walk through the remaining changed districts. Senate District 25. I'll start on the east and work my way west. District 25 stays largely the same, with slight adjustments in the Locust Grove area to accommodate the addition of District 17. This ensures that voters in this district will largely maintain existing representation. District 42. Because of the ripple effects of moving districts north, Senate District 42 was previously a majority white district in DeKalb County and is now a majority white district in eastern Metro Atlanta. It is much of the territory of the prior District 17, which has become a majority black district. It includes areas with strong connections like Newton, Morgan, and Walton counties, and growing areas of Henry County. The boundaries include many rural areas and areas where people are moving from Henry County into as they get older. Here, Covington is made whole. This map also follows Newton County's newest precincts that were enacted this past summer. This configuration also ensures more of Newton County stays together. Senate District 43. In order to make room for District 17, District 43 moves north into Gwinnett County, similar to the configuration of the existing District 55. Otherwise, this district is largely unchanged, with all of Rockdale and portions of Newton and DeKalb all suburban areas. This district shares connections through I-20 into growing areas of Gwinnett County. Senate District 55. Senate District 55 also ripples north, taking in Tucker and some areas that were previously in Senate District 41. It remains in both DeKalb and Gwinnett counties and includes areas along I-285 on the eastern portion of the city. Although Tucker isn't whole, it includes almost all of the city, along with areas of Stonecrest. All of Stone Mountain is in this district. Senate District 41. As part of the ripple effects around the area, District 41 shifts to the west, taking in all of Clarkston and moving over north of Decatur. This district previously ran from Stonecrest to Clarkston, so it includes a number of areas that were previously in it. This configuration enables the district to stay majority black while moving north because of the locating of District 17 to the south. Next is Senate District 10. District 10 is directly affected by the creation of District 17 because it previously ran through that part of South Henry County, now included in District 17. As a result, the district shifts north to include areas around Decatur. The district previously included Stockbridge with portions of Stonecrest and will continue to do so, but with less of Stockbridge included. This district remains majority black even as it shifts north. Senate District 44. Like District 10, District 44 has to give up population in the southern portion of the district to create District 17, so it moves north as well. In so doing, it takes in Decatur, ensuring that we included portions of Decatur that were excluded in 2021 because these boundaries had not been updated. The mayor of Decatur had asked for all of the city to be in one district. The district includes all of Decatur and most of Avondale Estates, areas that were previously in District 42, while keeping those communities whole. This district remains majority black even as it shifts north. Moving over to the other side of Metro Atlanta, the next set of districts are changes necessary to add other new majority black district in South Metro Atlanta. There are some blank spaces you'll notice on your map because no changes were needed in Districts 36, 34, and 16. Senate District 39. District 39 maintains its current north-south orientation, shifting to the west slightly to accommodate the changes to add District 28 as a new majority black district. The north-south orientation has been consistent with how this district has existed for several cycles of redistricting. This district has only minor changes and mostly remains the same. Senate District 38. District 38 shifts east and north to accommodate the addition of District 28 in the south. It exits Cobb County and now will be wholly within Fulton County, connecting areas from Palmetto and Union City to stay whole to areas of Buckhead. There is a strong community in Fulton County, and the district maintains its majority black status even as it shifts north. Senate District 35. This district shifts significantly to the north to accommodate the new majority black District 28 in South Metro Atlanta. Instead of running south, it now runs from South Fulton up to the Smyrna area while maintaining its majority black status. These areas are connected as growing suburbs located primarily along the 285 corridor on the west side and sharing a number of common interests as growing areas. This district connects the Smyrna Vinings area with Atlanta and South Fulton County. Senate District 33. In order to accommodate the shifts of adding District 28, District 33 shifts north and east, taking in areas toward East Cobb. The district maintains its primary east-west orientation, connecting Powder Springs with Marietta, as it did previously. The district is wholly within Cobb County and keeps Powder Springs whole. The core of this district remains the same. Senate District 6. In the process of creating District 28, there was significant population left where District 6 is now located. This district keeps Coweta and Heard counties whole, avoiding a split of Coweta County. In order to come up to the population needed, it moves into the southern part of Carroll County, where District 28 previously connected Coweta, Heard, and parts of Carroll in the map prior to the 2021 districts. District 6 connects the University of West Georgia with Noonan, where there are strong growing communities, and ensures that small areas in rural Carroll County, which share a strong similarity to Heard County, can remain in a district that is similar. Senate District 30. District 30 remains largely the same, with the same boundaries in Haralson and Paulding as it previously had. The district previously included a portion of Douglas County and now takes more of the western part of Douglas in an area that is very similar to Carroll, including Villa Rica, which is a city that straddles the county line. The district includes most of Carrollton, and Carroll County remains the largest county in the district. The district shifts east to help accommodate the creation of the new majority black District 28. This is a job that I take seriously. It's important to me that this map complies fully with Judge Jones's order, and I truly believe it does. I have spent hours over a few weeks talking with senators about their districts to gain a better understanding of their districts. I know there's been criticism from people who spoke at the committee hearing that they've not had much time to comment on the map. I understand their frustration, but with the limited time that we were given by Judge Jones to complete this, I had the map released on the day we finalized it. The map was released 2 days before our special session convened. From the time that map was posted, the online public comment portal was opened, and we began receiving comments. I've spent a significant amount of time reading those comments. I also made sure that every person who wanted to speak at our hearings was given an opportunity to speak. I am proud that during the public comments, representatives from the ACLU said we added the districts that were supposed to be added. Fair Districts Georgia Foundation also agrees that our map complies with Judge Jones's order. They provided this flyer to us at the committee hearing that says complies with the mandate. You know, redistricting is complicated and highly technical, so much so that it takes specially trained people to even create the redistricting plans. As chair of the Reapportionment and Redistricting Committee, when we sat down with specialists in the map drawing and law, I made clear I wanted these maps to comply with Judge Jones's order and otherwise follow all of our traditional redistricting principles. We relied on the experts in the law and in map drawing to make sure those goals were met, and I'm confident that we are. Mr. President, I'll yield for questions.
You do have, thank you, Senator. You do have some questions. Senator from the 56.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the chairwoman yield?
I will.
Madam Chair, first I want to thank you for your hard work. I know this has been a challenging and very time-crunch process. I'd like to ask you a few questions as it relates to traditional redistricting principles. I know you've mentioned some of these, but I think it's worth us reiterating what was done. Isn't it true that we only added a single county split out of all 159 counties in your map?
The senator knows of what he speaks.
Will you yield for another question?
I will.
Isn't it true that we followed the 2022 precinct boundaries as much as possible based on the order?
This is true. The senator knows of what he speaks.
And one final question, if I can, Madam Chair. In the terms of incumbents, all 56 of us that are here right now, isn't it true that in your map, not one single incumbent from either party was paired?
The senator knows of what he speaks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator from the 1st, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the senator yield?
I yield.
Madam Chair, we certainly appreciate what you have done, what your committee has done. I had a couple of clarifications, if you don't mind. One thing I know we're grateful for is Judge Jones being very clear in his order about what we're supposed to do. From here, do you have any concerns about whether this plan complies with that order?
I have no concerns with the plan complying. I fully believe the plan complies with the judge's order.
Thank you. And one more point of clarification. After we conclude with this session, can you explain to us the process with the court from this point forward?
Sure. So Judge Jones will have the opportunity to review these plans, and we're confident he will conclude that we have fully complied with his order. If he disagrees, then he would redraw the court-drawn plans for use in 2024, but we believe our maps will be used in the 2024 election.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator from the 10th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the senator yield?
I yield.
Senator, will you yield for a series of questions, please?
I yield.
Thank you. Are you familiar with the terms PAC, stack, and crack as it relates to redistricting?
I am familiar with those terms, but I am no expert.
Senator, further yield?
I further yield.
Do you mind explaining what your familiarity is with those terms, please?
I see what we're trying to do here. What I have said is that I have consulted with experts who know the legal terminology, and I have relied on their expertise to help me with drawing this map.
Senator, further yield?
I'll further yield.
Senator, I'm not asking any trick questions here, and I'm not trying to take you anywhere. I'm just simply asking what your familiarity was with those particular terms, because I had a couple of questions and I wanted to make sure they were phrased in the right terminology.
Okay.
Senator, further yield?
Sure.
Senator, you stated earlier that what you've drawn in these maps should, that your intention was to fully comply with the judge's order. Is that correct?
That is correct, and we have fully complied with the judge's order.
Senator, further yield?
I yield.
So if I'm able to point out an area anywhere in these maps where you did not comply, would you then agree that your maps would be out of compliance?
The judge required that we draw 2 additional majority black districts in South Metro Atlanta, and that is precisely what we have done.
Senator Yield?
I yield.
Senator, that wasn't my question. My question, if you mind me phrasing it again, was you stated publicly several times that your maps and your intentions were to fully comply with the judge's order. So my question is, if I was able, or if anyone in our caucus was able, to identify an area in your maps that you drew that did not comply with the judge's order, would you then agree that your maps would be out of compliance?
I have consulted with legal counsel who specializes in this, and Gina Wright, who is acknowledged by the judge as an expert in this, and we all feel, and I feel, that these maps do comply. So I don't think you'll be able to point out an area that doesn't comply.
And I accept that, Senator, but if I did, again, is simply a yes/no question. Would you agree, yes or no?
I see what we're trying to do here. I'm not going to get trapped into anything. I have said, and I will say again, I believe our maps fully comply with the judge's order.
Senator, again, I'm not trying to trap you. I'm just trying to get some simple questions
You can move
answered.
on to your next question.
I'd be gladly to. Thank you, Senator. Senator, can you explain why in your maps district numbers for certain legislators, like the 35th, 28th, the 44th, and the 17th, were changed?
District numbers changed because the judge wanted specific districts to be drawn as majority black districts in South Metro Atlanta. So to comply with that, numbers were changed.
Is that the only reason, Senator?
To my knowledge, that's the only reason, yes.
Senator, further yield?
I'll further yield.
Senator, why does the Republican proposal leave Senate districts 16 and 34 unchanged when the court ruled that both districts as drawn violates the Voting Rights Act?
So the judge's order said that the areas of those districts, and we've accommodated for that in our maps. You know what, Mr. President? I'm probably going to get quoted on a lot of things that I've said, but I probably won't get quoted on this one. But you guys have had all week to ask me questions on behalf of your constituents on this map. We had a committee hearing. Not a single person asked me a question when given the opportunity in the committee hearing. So all of a sudden now when the cameras are on, everybody wants to ask questions. Mr. President, I yield the well.
Senator has yielded the well. State your inquiry.
Mr. President, isn't it true that given the gravity and the nature of what we're discussing, that it's important?
I can't hear you, Senator. Speak up. I'm sorry.
Senator, I'm sorry, Mr. President. Given the gravity and the nature of what we're discussing, that it's critically important that all of the questions that we have in the Democratic caucus should be answered in whatever form those questions are asked.
The senator who authored the bill always retains the right, as you well know, Senator, being a distinguished member of this body for so long, a senator can yield the well at any time. And it does go through the committee process, which we put it through. But I'm sure there's going to be other speakers here that you, if you still have questions that you'd like to ask, you'll be able to ask.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mm-hmm. Senator from the 31st, would you like to speak? No? Wait. Senator from the 55th. I'm sorry. Minority Leader, I'm sorry. This is the 50th here. I apologize. Senator from the 50th. The 50th, I apologize. You'll be next.
Thank you, Mr. President. When I was first put on this committee at the beginning of this term, a mentor of mine back home who held this seat previously said that, well, if you get into redistricting, just to let you know, it's the most complex process you'll ever go through under the Gold Dome. And I don't think you can really appreciate that bit of knowledge until you've gone through it. In the court case, which we're here for today, the plaintiff's expert, Mr. Esselstyn, described redistricting as a deliciously complex puzzle. Now that we've gone through this process, I believe he's not necessarily referring to the drawing of the map itself, but the complexities of the surrounding process. What do I mean by that? Well, when we first saw the order, and we were told that we would be called into special session, Madam Chair reached out to a long list of senators asking to come in, meet with her, and discuss their districts and let us know what we need to know about their districts. And we have the list of everyone we reached out to. Then we have a list of those who actually took us up on that offer. And the list of senators who came in to meet versus the list of senators who were offered a meeting is very discouragingly short. But I will say, for those that did come in, they were very passionate about their district. And an overarching theme in our discussions was, hey, I like the maps how they are now. Please don't change my district. I agree with that. I believe that the maps that were drawn 2 years ago were good maps. I believe most members in this chamber were happy with them. Unfortunately, the federal judge disagreed. And so we're here now in response to an order that a judge asked us, and the judge had very specific instructions in that order, which when we sat down to draw these maps, we made it clear to the experts that we sat down with, we want to comply with this order. 100%. There's too much at stake for us not to comply. And that's what we did. We complied with the order. We complied with traditional redistricting process. And I think one of the most discouraging things that I've seen throughout this process is, I'll say, the lack of involvement, the lack of wanting to be involved with the process itself. We had meetings leading up to special session. We've had committee meetings, and very few individuals even approached us to talk about what they wanted, what they thought would be a good district. But if you go on social media, or you turn on the nightly news, or you look in the paper, you would think that's all that's been talked about down here. You would think that everyone has been knocking on our doors trying to tell us how we should draw the maps. I've seen quotes that what we're doing is criminal, what we're doing is rushed, and that we've taken no input. For those in this room, your job as legislators is to advocate for your district. The way to advocate for your district is to advocate in the committee rooms, is to advocate amongst your colleagues. It is not to run to the media and get on social media and try to get sound bites. We complied with the judge's orders. I am confident that we did what we were supposed to do. And I hope, if you're voting no on this piece of legislation, you go back to your district and you tell them how involved you tried to be, how involved you were, and not just that you talked to the media. And with that, Mr. President, I'll yield the will.
Senators yield the will. Senator from the 55th, the Minority Leader.
Got my red light on. Is that an indication? Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. There are a couple of things I want to address before I begin my remarks. And one of them is a letter to the members of my caucus received from the chair of the Reapportionment and Redistricting Committee. And in that letter, it states that a member could set up an appointment to come and talk about their prospective districts, and also that they could bring anyone with them that they chose to bring. And when that happened, the person that they took, which was legal counsel, was not allowed to come in the room. So that's the first thing I wanted to address, because the chair said that anybody could come and talk. And the other was questions from the members of the committee. There was never, on yesterday, there was never an invitation for the committee members to ask questions. I was there. I made a presentation. I was never offered to ask a question of the chair. And so I just wanted to clear that up, because it was stated that any member had the opportunity to ask questions. And the third thing is that everybody did not get to speak that wanted to speak. We had a couple of processes that we were following. If you had spoken the day before, then you couldn't speak the next day. And that's not usually how the committee is run. The same process takes place on Wednesday, and it takes place on Thursday. So that did not happen. But, good morning. I rise today to discuss the proposal for redrawing the Senate's legislative maps in accordance with a federal court order, and more importantly, in accordance with the Voting Rights Act. The Democratic caucus recognizes that fair maps are crucial to ensuring that every vote in Georgia counts equally and that no voter in Georgia is subject to discrimination in the election process. Therefore, we have not taken the federal court's order lightly. Last month, Judge Jones issued a 516-page order, which found that the 2021 map proposed and passed by Senate Republicans violated the Voting Rights Act and discriminated against black voters. Specifically, the court identified Senate Districts 10, 16, 17, 25, 28, 30, 34, 35, 43, and 44 as the area in which the map violated the Voting Rights Act. To remedy this violation, the court ordered that the Senate enact a map that includes 2 additional majority black districts, specifically in the area identified by the court. To be clear, the court's order contained 2 directives. First, that the 2 new majority black districts be created, and second, that the new majority black districts be created in the vote dilution area that the court identified as not providing black voters with an equal opportunity to elect the candidates of their choice. The proposed map we have before us from the majority does not follow the court's directive. In truth, the matter proposed by my Republican colleagues failed to comply with the Voting Rights Act and continues to dilute the voting power of black voters in South Metro Atlanta. In many ways, the Republican proposal is a hoax. In the Pacific area where the court found Voting Rights Act violations, the majority's proposal moves nearly as many black residents out of the existing majority black districts as it moves into majority black districts. This means that a net of only approximately 3,000 black voters in the vote dilution area identified by the court were moved into majority black districts. Republicans tried to cover up this hoax with smoke and mirrors. They attempt to obscure what has been done in this map by reassigning the district numbers of multiple existing incumbents. But you can't obscure the truth. The Republican proposal dilutes black voting power just like the 2021 Republican map did. The Republican proposal does little, if anything, to improve black voters' ability to elect candidates of their choice. Given this, the Democratic caucus presented an alternative map, but it was voted down in committee. We believe that it should have been adopted, but because it actually complies with the Voting Rights Act and specifically complied with the federal court's order. Had this proposal also been in front of us, you would see that the Democratic proposal does exactly what the court order demands. It draws 2 additional majority black districts in the vote dilution area where the court specifically found violations of the Voting Rights Act. In our proposal, the 16th and 17th districts are new majority black districts, and all of the proposed changes in our map are made in the area identified by the court. In that area, our proposals bring almost 150,000 black residents that currently live in non-majority black districts. It brings them into majority black districts. Our proposal does not move any black voters out of existing majority black districts and into non-majority black districts. Additionally, by focusing on only the area identified by the court, the Democratic proposal leaves 46 Senate districts exactly the same and only modifies the boundaries of 10 Senate districts. That is, the 10 identified by the court. By comparison, the Republican proposal modifies the boundaries of 15 Senate districts. Of the 15 districts, only 8 of them were identified by the court as diluting black voting power. Further, the Democratic proposal does not pair any incumbents. It also does not unnecessarily change district numbers where district boundaries have not dramatically changed. Keeping the same district numbers as the 2021 maps will decrease voter confusion. It would decrease voters from wondering, what district am I in now? Where do I go to vote? Where is my polling place? It would prevent confusion in the 2024 election cycle and increase voter confidence. Additionally, there will be little to no voter confusion in the 46 Senate districts that have not been changed. In contrast, the majority proposal before us, fewer than 4,000 black voting age residents in the vote dilution districts would achieve new status because the new districts were created primarily from areas that were largely already in majority black districts, or in the case of substantial populations in Douglas and Newton County, were previously in majority black districts, but were cracked into non-Voting Rights Act compliant districts. The Republican proposal achieves additional majority black districts by packing and reconfiguring non-affected areas elsewhere on the map. If the Republicans plan passes, the federal court's findings of disenfranchisement center on the areas around Henry County, Griffin and Spalding County, Northwest Fayette County, Central Newton County, and Western Douglas County would still apply. That would mean that tens of thousands of black voters in those areas will still not have equal opportunities to elect the candidates of their choice. As we did in 2021, Senate Democrats are again pleading with Republicans to pass a map that complies with the Voting Rights Act and that does not discriminate against black voters. We believe that passing the Republican map will only lead to more litigation and waste taxpayer dollars. Georgians deserve fair maps, and it is our duty to create fair maps that reflect the diversity of Georgia and that comply with federal law. Mr. President and members of the Senate, I appreciate your time, your willingness to listen to my comments, and I just hope that you can abide by my requests. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield well.
Thank you, Senator. Senator has yielded the well. Recognize Senator from the 43rd. Senator, there she is.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, colleagues. I rise today to talk about redistricting maps proposed by our majority colleagues. I could stand in this well and talk about how the majority's map does nothing to address the concerns that Judge Jones laid out in his 516-page ruling. But everyone in this chamber already knows that this map does nothing to strengthen black voting power in the areas identified by the court. Instead of talking about this map's failings, I am going to speak to you as a woman, more specifically, a beautiful black woman. Indeed, I am coming to you as a member of the community that the court's order specifically says is being discriminated against by this state that I love. I am coming to you as a member of the community that the court's order rules is not being given an equal opportunity to vote. My colleagues claim that they care about and listen to black people and black women. The majority claims that they value the votes and the voices of black people and black women, but all evidence to this is contrary. Voting for this map means ignoring the voices, lived experiences, concerns, and rights of black voters. It also means ignoring the voices of black people in this very room. You may think mapping and morality have very little to do with each other, but in this case, they go hand in hand. Our state constitution invests the power of creating and passing laws in our legislature, whose members are elected every 2 years by the people of their district. So the discussion about redistricting and mapping is indeed a political one, but we cannot overlook the moral aspect of it. We are watching a process again, where accumulated power to diminish the political impact of black voters in Georgia is happening. This doesn't just make it more difficult for black people to vote and to feel fairly represented. It makes it more difficult for us to be heard. Issues such as health care. Georgia ranks low on access to health care. Maternal mortality. We rank higher than the national average for black maternal health. Gun violence, reproductive rights, and unequal pay disproportionately affect black women. Black people also generally experience lower educational attainment and income levels and are twice as likely to be unemployed when compared to white people. This is no secret, and actually the federal court pointed to this in their order. And when the Republicans shove people who disagree with their policies into a few districts, they are reducing black voters' voices and uplifting a very vocal minority. By packing black voters, Republicans can make a deliberate choice to ignore Georgians. I've mentioned this before, but Philippians 2:4 says, instead of each person watching out for their own good, watch out for what is better for others. So when you say we value women voters or we value black voters, my question is, do you? Do you value the voters or just the votes? If you value the voters, especially the black women voters, prove it. Hear them, listen to them, represent them, represent their concerns. Where can we access quality health care? How are you going to fix the abysmal maternal mortality rate among black women? Then I hear in the community questions like, Can you enact common sense gun laws so no other mother has to bury her child? Another question I hear is, where can we find safe and affordable health care while we work? These are the questions I hear in the community. These are the voices I represent. There is no fair and right representation of all Georgians with the majority's new maps. Instead, the majority has made the Senate a trading place for voters' voices and voters' rights, reducing them, you, me, as a black woman, to marks on a tally sheet. Rather than doing justice, loving mercy, and walking humbly, in other words, doing the right thing and making their case to the voters, Republicans undermine black voters' voices. So yes, this is about maps and districts and the Voting Rights Act. But it's also about very real consequences of looking at specific groups of voters, people, as more valuable than others. And that's immoral. Our democracy deserves better. Our people deserve better. And Georgia definitely deserves better. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. Senators yielded the well. I recognize Senator from the 35th, and you can speak from your desk.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am, I guess, the new black district, and I've been here the first time since '94. And I've always had a majority black district. But now my whole house has been cut out of my district that I've been representing and put in another district. So I speak today because I'm deeply saddened and concerned about the map being proposed by my Republican colleagues. I am saddened for myself, yes, but more importantly, I'm saddened for the black voters in South Metro Atlanta. For too long, black voters in Georgia have been discriminated against by rooms filled with people who don't even look like them. Dating back to this country's founding and extending into today, black people and black voters have been told that their voices and life experiences don't even matter. This has been for so long. Black people who are voters here in Georgia have been told to trust the system, the political process, because your votes are important. Not only to be shown time and time again that their votes matter only to the extent that the people in this room allow them to matter. It's time to end this tragedy. It's time to end this partisan game played for the success of a few over the masses. It's time to end this partisan game where the true victims are not either political party, but black voters who've been fighting for centuries now for equal treatment under the law. Black people have marched. Black people have been beaten. Black people have died for this right to vote. And here we are, still having the same debate. Here we are yet again with the majority party attempting to stifle black citizens' ability to have meaningful participation in the election process, to have a meaningful ability to elect candidates of their choice. And we continue to have this conversation, even though a federal court judge has already ruled that the map passed by this Senate in 2021 violated black voters' rights under the Voting Rights Act. This Republican proposal will suffer the same fate as many of my colleagues have already stated. Judge Jones ordered that the Senate redraw its maps to remedy specific discrimination against black voters in 10 districts, including District 35, which I represent. Instead of doing that, The Republican proposal makes most of its changes in districts not identified by the court order. To cover up this gamesmanship, the Republican proposal changes district numbers, including mine, for no apparent reason. It's changed the district numbers of black voters, and it was not necessary. None of you should be fooled by this. The Republican map being proposed violates federal law, period. This is just smoke and mirrors to change numbers of existing black districts. The Republican proposal does nothing to increase equality for black voters in South Metro Atlanta, period. This map continues to discriminate against black voters, including the voters that I currently represent, period. And no one in this room should support it, period. Yesterday, during the committee meeting on this map, one of my colleagues highlighted that Georgia has made significant progress toward racial equality in the election process. No one's going to deny that. We're all proud to represent this great state of Georgia, where I was born and raised. Third generation on my mother's side and fourth on my father's. However, progress does not mean equality. Progress means that we're getting closer. But as the court made clear, we are not there yet. So in his order on page 9, and in different words on page 516, Judge Jones said, and I quote, "The court commends Georgia for the great strides that it has made to increase the political opportunities of black voters in 58 years since the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. Despite these great gains, the court determines that in certain areas of the state, the political process is not equally open to black voters. This means that the progress that we have made is not enough for black voters in the South Metro area. And I'm standing here saying it. Many other Democrats have already said it. The court has said it. And the sentiment has echoed in the public comments over the last few days. So this means that the Republican proposal is not enough for black voters in South Metro Atlanta because it continues to ignore that this right to equality should be upheld. The Republican proposal is not enough. It violates the Voting Rights Act. This map clearly violates the Voting Rights Act. So everyone in this room should be just as disappointed as I am. Everybody in this room should oppose this map. It's not about me. It's about the best for the state of Georgia. I just thank you, Mr. President, and I yield the will. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator from the 2nd would like to speak. I didn't even know you were up next, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today I rise in opposition to the maps created by the majority party and passed out of committee, as they were done to be nothing more, in my opinion, than a shell game. Because black voters in the dilution area identified in Judge Jones' order have no new opportunities, because all we did was change the numbers. So history would suggest in Selma, when Dr. King wrote these words before President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act, Dr. King said, "We see a classic pattern of disenfranchisement typical of southern black belt areas where blacks are in the majority." What Dr. King knew was that if districts weren't drawn so black folks could elect their representatives of their choice, they would not have any political power. Judge Jones' order says that the map should create additional opportunities, not play with the district numbers around the map. All we, and when I say we, I'm speaking for black folks, is for you to be true to what Judge Jones said on paper. Matthew 25:40 says, when the disciples asked Jesus when had they done all of these things, when questioning Jesus about the parable before him, Jesus answered and said, when you've done them to the least of these, you've also done them to me. And so you should just do the right thing and follow Judge Jones' order by doing the right thing for black voters to have that right to elect a candidate. Because I heard in committee someone say, we hope that there are black voters in the GOP. Black folks are not a monolith. In my own Senate district, I had a primary and a general. Both candidates were black. I have a majority black district, and I had a black Republican challenge me in that district. Why not draw districts so that black folks are the majority and can elect a candidate of their choosing? Because whether you are a Republican or a Democrat, you ought to go out and talk to black folks. Don't be afraid to talk to black voters and ask them for their vote, because if you talk to them and ask them for their vote, they might vote for you. But if you draw it on partisanship because you don't want to talk to those voters, then they never have an opportunity. And so you should make it partisan. Make it about Judge Jones' order. And that order is about creating majority districts for black folks in the affected areas. Don't tell me this map passes because this map doesn't do enough. Do the right thing by the black voters in this state because we deserve it. As I close, I'm reminded of the words of a Baptist preacher that said, we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied to a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. And what you have done here just blocks black voters because you think that it will affect your majority, because you're saying you won't give black voters what the judge ordered. As we'll wrap together in that single garment of destiny, I'm reminded that there's nothing you can do to escape it because we're all tied together. As I heard one of my colleagues say yesterday, we're still all God's children. So as I take my receipt, I'm reminded of a proverb that says, until the lion gets a chance to tell his story, the hunter will always be the hero. So when the lion tells his story, it will be a story of how justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. Because just like the lion, black voters want the chance to elect their own representatives who will also tell their story. And as I take my seat, Mr. President, one of the great activists, none other than Miss Fannie Lou Hamer, said that she was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And just like Sister Fannie Lou Hamer, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired of having to have the conversation about fighting for black folks. All I ask my colleagues in the majority to do is just do the right thing by black voters and give them just what the judge ordered. With that, Mr. President, I yield the will.
Senator has yielded. Thank you, Senator. Senator from the 9th, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to talk in opposition to the proposed map that we have before us this morning. But first, I want us to get a few facts straight. No, it's not our job to get sound bites and try to be on the news, but it is our job to be transparent, to tell the truth, and to be factual. And we need to tell the truth to black voters. And that's not what is happening on this map. I know all of the talk about numbers and redistricting gets very confusing to the public, but I'm gonna break this down really, really simple of why this map is bad. Violates the Voting Rights Act, fails to comply with a judge's order, and the Republicans love to say how they are the party of law and order. Illegally gerrymanders, dilutes the voting power of black voters. This is what this map does. Another untruth. our chairman from the 49th, respectfully, she said that adequate testimony was allowed during committee. I listened to the committee hearing when Republicans presented their map. We got a lot of testimony was allowed from the public. I think it was over an hour. Upon closing, no questions were allowed or permitted to be asked of the committee. The Republicans in control of that committee about their maps. No question. Closed out. We're done for the day. However, the Democrats go to present their map the following day, yesterday. All of a sudden, we can't hear testimony from the public. And as they were pressed on that, the lack of testimony from allowing testimony from the public, they yielded a little bit, allowed 5 people to speak for 5 minutes. And then proceeded to ask Democrats a series of questions about the Democratic map. Yet, they answered not one question about the Republican map. Also to note, during their hearing on the Republican map, not one person came up in testimony for that map, not one. Transparency, folks, and what is right and what's wrong is wrong, and we're not talking about sound bites. We're talking about telling the truth. So let's talk more about transparency, or the lack thereof from the Republicans. Being transparent means being upfront about your motivations. It appears to me the motivation is to not represent black voters or talk to them. It means that you have nothing to hide when it comes to revealing what you stand for and what you're trying to accomplish. What are we accomplishing here? What were we sent to accomplish here? To create minority voting district under specific guidelines. We took districts that weren't even part of the order, and we still don't have an explanation for that. The chairwoman never really answered that question. The court ordered all of us to ensure that our district maps comply with the Voting Rights Act. To do so, we are obligated to make sure that the voters in the designated black communities have a chance to make a meaningful impact with their votes. They deserve their voices to be heard and their votes to be counted. That they have a real chance to elect representatives that are reflective of who they are and what they stand for. We want that for all Georgians. So, again, what is this map accomplishing really? The statistics speak for themselves. In the Republicans' map, only a net of approximately 3,000 additional black voters in Georgia are given this opportunity to be reassigned to a district where their power of their vote is not weakened by being forced to vote in a district where the majority does not share their political values. Whereas in the Democrats' map, the opportunity is afforded to an additional 105,000 people. Republicans, we see through you, and the public sees through you. When we take a second look at what you've done, we see that you have moved black voters from one black majority district to another. Why would you do that? What are you trying to accomplish? Your court-ordered task was to ensure that fellow Georgians of color have a chance to make their voices heard and that their voices carry all the way to the Gold Dome. Your task was not to ensure that nothing changes politically. The experts cited in the court order agreed race and politics can sometimes be intertwined. But the way to measure whether district lines have been redrawn in a way that complies with the order is not to assess whether there are changes along political lines. It's to see how many eligible voters in the black community in Georgia have an opportunity to cast a vote that's going to matter. 3,000 versus 105,000. Help me. 3,000 on the Republican maps versus 105 on the Democratic map. Republicans, we see through you. We see what your priorities are. At the committee hearing yesterday, I also observed that the senator from the 46th said that he voted in favor of the Republican maps in 2021 because he was advised by legal counsel that they weren't discriminatory. Wasn't really sure what he meant by that. But perhaps the topic could have come up again earlier, and we could have asked that question if Democrats were allowed to even ask the questions about the maps that the Republicans presented. It's part of having testimony. You want to clarify. You want to clarify some questions about what's happening here. We want to clarify maybe some past statements that were made. Democrats were not allowed to ask any questions during the Republican committee hearing. That was a lie. In fact, the Republican leaders of the reapportionment committee created entirely different rules for Democrats after they presented and were not intending to allow any public comment after the presentation of the Democratic map. This process was not fair, and the Republicans' proposal is not fair. And what we're trying to accomplish here is fairness. Fairness so that black voters have their voices heard at the ballot box. And with that, Mr. President, I thank you, and I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. Senators yielded the well. Senator from the 40th, let's speak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, I must start by saying that as I look out across this Senate body, I see mostly my Democratic colleagues right now. I see a few Republicans, and I thank you for being in your seats to listen to us. We came here this special session to deal with one thing and one thing only, and that's these maps. And it bothers me that I see so many empty seats, because during regular session, there are a lot of reasons to be out of the chamber, but there are no reasons to be out of the chamber this morning. This week, I've been feeling a little bit of deja vu, because I was here in the other chamber in the House in 2004, when we went through a similar process. Most of you were not here then, some of you were, so let me kind of tell a little bit of history. We had gone through redistricting in 2001. We were a Democratic state, House, Senate, and governor's office. That was beginning to change, and so I'll admit the redistricting process did become partisan. There was some gerrymandering that happened. And there were some court cases, some constitutional challenges to the map. One of those court cases did win, and we had to redraw the maps under threat of a special master taking that process over if the legislature could not do it. Now, there's one big difference between what happened then and what is happening today, and that's the challenge in 2004 was a constitutional challenge, but it had nothing to do with racial discrimination. It had to do with packing districts. Now we are here today to deal with the issue of racial discrimination. And that is very different. In 2004, or in 2001, we were still under, we had to get our maps pre-cleared to make sure they weren't diluting black vote before we passed those maps. Because of a U.S. Supreme Court case in 2013, this is the first time we've gone through that where we didn't have to get our maps pre-cleared. So nobody was really scrutinizing those maps very carefully. Someone said previously, Legislative Counsel said these maps were fine. These maps did not dilute black vote, the maps we passed in 2021. But I will say, you tend to not see what you don't want to see. So I venture to say that the federal government probably looked a little closer than our Legislative Counsel did, and we need to look, and Judge Jones, being a black man himself, looked a lot more carefully at that map than we looked at it in 2021, and probably more carefully than Legislative Counsel looked at it. Now, what happened in 2004 is the legislature was given 3 weeks to pass a new map. We were in session. It was toward the end of session. And that was the session where we were no longer fully Democratic. Sonny Perdue had won the governor's office. The Senate was elected Democratic, but flipped to Republican after the election when people changed parties. The House was still Democratic. So you had a challenge where Georgia had functioned as a one-party state for 135 years, all of a sudden was a two-party state, and they had to draw maps together. They didn't know how to do it. So they failed to draw a map in 3 weeks. So it was then handed to the special master to redraw a map completely blind of incumbent addresses. The map came out. Committee chairman, powerful committee chairmen were paired with other powerful committee chairmen. Nobody liked that map. At the end of that session, 350 years of legislative experience walked out and did not return to the election process. I did that. I left. Because my district, it was like, if my district was like this and I lived here, my district did this. It was a completely new district. And I had a 2- and 4-year-old and an unemployed husband. And so I said, this is not worth it. I am not going to run again. A lot of other people made that same decision. 350 years walked out. 56 of those years were, if you might remember, Senator Hugh Gillis, who was elected, served 56 years in this chamber and was elected in 1948. He left too. Now I say that because as I walk the halls this week, I feel like I'm breathing in very thick air. But there's probably a couple reasons why I'm feeling that way. I'm feeling that way because I feel like Georgia is at a turning point. That we are at a point in terms of our racial progress that we are turning around and going backwards. And that hurts my heart. But I also feel like the air is thick because there are people who are afraid of losing their seats. This map here, I think, worked harder at protecting Republican incumbents than it did fixing the problem
that the judge ordered. Not one Republican is losing a seat here. And I think some of that thick air I'm feeling is people walking around thinking, I don't want to lose the power that I have. That's hard to walk away from. I admit that. I had to do it. I enjoyed the power I had when I served in the House. But I left and I was okay. I believe that countries have souls. And you see this so clearly in the Middle East right now, where you have populations of people who are fighting over the soul of the land. I also believe that states have souls. And I am proud of Georgia's soul. And I believe that Georgia has a soul of progressiveness that goes way back to the 1700s when General George Oglethorpe started the colony of Georgia. Because General Oglethorpe based the beginnings of this state on criminal justice reform and self-determination. He wanted to reform the prisons in England. There were people being held in prisons who were held there simply because they were in debt. And he wanted to give them a second chance. He brought them to Georgia. He said, let's make silk. Let's plant mulberry trees. He kind of missed the point that the Georgia coast had a sandy soil and might not grow mulberry trees. But the point is, the beginning, the seed of Georgia, our first story was about giving people a second chance. And so I believe at the root of Georgia's soul is a spirit of inclusiveness, of self-determination, and of forgiveness. And I believe that at this moment in history, we are putting that at risk. In this room, we have lots of stories. It is important for us as members of this body to get to know each other and to hear each other's stories. There are very few opportunities in our country right now where people of different backgrounds, such as we have in the Senate, can come together and talk to each other, because we are such a politically divided country right now. So what I ask as a white member of this chamber is that we as white people take more opportunity, and I wish some of my more of my white Republican colleagues were here to hear this, but we need to sit down with our black colleagues and hear their stories. Because I think if we did that, we wouldn't end up with this map. As a white person, as I faced struggles and challenges, the message that I heard was, you can do anything. As I hear stories from my black colleagues, sometimes what I hear is that they were told when they were children is, I know this is upsetting, but don't rock the boat. Because if you do, bad things can happen. Those are two very different stories, and that is why, and two different experiences, and that is why it's so important to not dilute black vote. You have black communities embedded in these districts that rely on their black leaders to know what to do and to learn how to advocate for themselves. If you crack one of those communities and put it into a strongly Republican district and take their leader away, they no longer have the confidence in their leadership. And what happened in the south of Atlanta is some of these communities were cracked into districts that vote like 80% Trump. These are populations that don't talk very well to each other. These are polarized populations, and that is exactly why the judge picked this area south of Atlanta. We were supposed to stay in that area and make these changes there. Instead, the map drawers went north. Now, it's hard when you look at these maps to see this racial dilution because it's so, when you look at gerrymandering, you used to look at gerrymandering and see oddly shaped districts. Now, because of the data we have, it's, we do everything by numbers. And so you can hide this racial discrimination, you can hide this gerrymandering. I beg you to listen to these stories of your black colleagues. Our senator from the 15th has written a book. And the title of it is something his mother told him, right? Our senator from the 15th was told that to survive in his world, he needed to learn how to get butter from a duck. Now I ask you, the white members of this body, did you have to get butter from a duck to survive in your world? I believe that if we are going to heal as a state, we all must look into each other's eyes in this very body and set the example for talking across these lines, looking into each other's eyes and seeing our common humanness, because life is hard. We all have hard things that we have to live through. And the more we know about that from each other, the more we can better serve the people of Georgia. If we don't do this, I do believe that Georgia will lose its soul. And that would be a tragic burden to leave to the next generation. So I hope that we can do better with these maps. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. My former suite mate, Senator from 26.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, what I've learned over the years comes from experience. In 1969, I was at Tuskegee Institute then, majoring in political science and playing football to pay for me going to school. And I never would forget that we had an African instructor by the name of Ninjaka. And a class project was to go to Barber County, Eufaula, Alabama, and register black voters. That was the first time that I was ever shot at by folks who didn't look like me, because I was trying to get folks who looked like me to become registered voters. After leaving school, I wanted to play professional football. My eyes were on the money, and I wanted to have me some of it. But the deal didn't work out. So in 1970,